Grammar schools were probably one of the most transformative public policies of the middle of the 20th century. They took a very large population of working class kids and gave them opportunities that they would never have got any other way. And actually, I'm an example. I mean, people look at my background and they seem to think it was sort of not quite sort of clogs and living under tin roofs, but it was a single mum, working class background, relatively poor, and yet I had all the opportunities really Britain could offer in educational and career terms.
I'm very fortunate. I grew up in Altrincham in the borough of Trafford, which had very good grammar and high schools, very good system of selective education, and still has. I think we probably have the best state education in the country. Certainly when you adjust for all the demographics, we do better than any comparable area. And we're right up at the top of the league.
And the trouble is today that we have removed that opportunity for vast numbers of youngsters. In fact, we have compressed the numbers of grammar schools so much that now they are, to a large extent, very middle class dominated. Parents move to be close to them, buy a higher house at a higher cost, or tutor their kids to get through the 11 plus. So they're still a motor for social mobility, but nothing like as good as it used to be. And that's all down to, I'm afraid, a massive failure in public policy, a massive failure in confidence in high quality education for bright kids.
During that period, as most local authorities got rid of their grammar schools, we've seen social mobility take a nosedive. We've seen far fewer people from state-educated backgrounds in the professions, in law, in the upper reach of the civil service, the judiciary, and in politics. And I think it's one of the things which is building a less cohesive society. I think people feel more divided because of it. And I think it's one of the things that's separating the political process and what's being perceived now as a political elite from the people. I think we really need to get back to that kind of social mobility, that sense that anybody can get on according to their ability and their efforts.
There are three answers to the question that it's not a fair system anymore. I mean, the first one is, there was never a golden age when everybody's opportunities and everybody's environment was the same. I grew up in a prefab. Today it would have been condemned and made of asbestos. I was the son of a single mum, so I was basically brought up by my grandparents. Now, actually, these all turn out to be not disadvantages, but you might have said, if you're a sociologist, oh well, that's a more disadvantaged situation than some other. So that was always there. The second issue really is whether or not you can devise exams that can see through the problem of disadvantage. Clearly, language, for example, is going to be affected by the extent to which you are surrounded by books, you're surrounded by articulate parents, and all the rest of it. So you've got to devise the test to some extent to be robust in the face of that, and go more for logic, try and reflect the culture of the day. There is no doubt at all, however, that today, because of cramming, because of tutoring, particularly in London, where there's a big population fighting for a small number, that massively favours the sort of the tiger mums and the aggressive middle class. The answer to that, bluntly, is have a lot more grammar schools. If you've got a shortage of grammar schools, sharp-elbowed parents are going to push others out. They're going to push out those who've perhaps not got two parents. All those sorts of things that happen. So have a lot more. There were two weaknesses of the old grammar school system, which, if we're going to expand grammar schools, we really have to put right. One is the sort of one chance and that's your life determined problem of the 11 plus. And I am of the view, I mean, independent schools select a couple of years later. I'm of the view there's no reason why you should not have three stages of selection. So, you've just got to pass one of them to get in. It seems that some youngsters develop at different speeds. Some kids at 11 are very developed, some kids at 11 are not very developed. So massively expanding the amount of time you spend on it, and perhaps putting a little bit more. I wouldn't put an awful lot into coursework, but putting a little bit more into coursework so that you actually know if somebody's exam results don't look right, you can come back and do something remedial about it. So that's one thing I do. The other great weakness of the old system was that we sort of treated it as a sort of winners and losers system only. And when it was first designed in post-war, it was called the tripartite system. And the idea was you'd have grammar schools, technical schools, and secondary modern schools. We sort of junked that second half of it and just said, you know, grammar schools and others, grammar schools and secondary schools. And we didn't put the resources into the secondary schools. We didn't put the effort into the secondary schools to make sure that the youngsters who went there also had good life chances, whether it was developing skills in, you know, sort of plumbing or mechanical engineering or whatever, or indeed developing academic skills that perhaps were more suited to youngsters who perhaps didn't have the sort of focused academic abilities, but still had a good brain. People I used to meet in the factories that I used to run, you know, they'll often be the shop steward on the floor. They may have been dyslexic when they were young, or they may have developed late, or they may have had a bad family background, but for whatever reason, the system didn't catch them. We've got to make sure we catch as many as possible, and then those we don't catch, we still make sure they get a decent education.